Hi everyone, welcome back. This is episode 2 of Behind the Canvas. Today I will be showing you how I paint a landscape based on a picture that I took in Lisbon, and the differences between approaching a landscape and approaching a portrait, because they're quite different. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's get to it. So the first step is sketching the composition, just like last time, but not really, because the first thing I did was adding some water to the canvas to make it easier to work with. I am using oil colors that can be diluted with water, which is really convenient for me. I mentioned it last time. They're, in my eyes, a little bit friendlier to work with than regular oil colors, although there's this whole thing about the pigments not being the same and you're not getting like the same intensity. Anyway, that's the first thing I did. Then I started sketching the composition, which is just the primary lines, like I said before. So far it's all the same, more or less, to the beginning of the other painting. It's just about fitting the subject in the canvas and making sure that it fits correctly. Now the next step is again just the underpainting, blocking those massive shapes of the composition, those general shapes, with primary colors. And I'm using yellow because it's a nighttime landscape with a lot of warm light, and that street light is best used or best represented with yellow. That's simple. And once I'm done with this, I'm gonna move to the next step, which is building form. Now building form in this stage just means that I'm going to start using thicker lines, so I know where the street ends, where the buildings begin, where those buildings end and begin, if it makes sense. But keeping it simple, I just need to visualize it without losing control of where things are. So now it's time to use a different color, and I'm using blue for the night sky. Right now, again, it's just a matter of blocking in the main shapes and more or less making sure that I get the subject right. And I'm not going to care too much about whether I add enough paint or not, whether I do it correctly. Again, just like I did with the buildings, it's just a placeholder at the moment. Now, I think this painting is an experiment for me, just like the one I did last video, because I find that I am in a comfort zone whenever I paint something realistic, whenever I do a landscape or a portrait or anything that basically represents what I'm looking at in a realistic way. I feel very at home there. But I don't know, I want to transition slightly, or maybe just maybe not transition completely, but start working on abstract projects. And to me, abstract art is difficult. I find it very, very difficult, to be honest. Maybe because I have an approach to art that really focuses on bringing things that people can relate to and things that people can identify. And whenever I see something abstract, I struggle to connect with it, to be honest. I find it a little bit too vague. And I don't know, I want to change that a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to stop producing more figurative art, because that's honestly that's something I absolutely love doing, but I would like to try something new. So this is a journey. This is, like I said, an experiment. And in this painting, because I'm using this painting as an example, um, the subject of the painting will be the only part of the painting where I will actually try to bring in detail. Yes, the rest is gonna still be realistic, because honestly, I cannot jump that quickly from 0 to 100 uh, to something that I have no experience with or very little experience with. And the rest of the painting, I'll try to keep as mm, not vague, but as simple as possible, if it makes any sense. I guess it will make sense once you start looking at what I mean in a few minutes. Now, going back to the painting process, now I'm adding a little bit more of red. Actually, not a little bit more of red, but I'm adding just a little bit of red to make a little bit more contrast. That's the thing that I'm doing, separating the shadows of the buildings and the darker areas from the lighter ones. That's it. That's as much as I'm doing there. So red is also helping me here to mark a specific point or element of the painting that I didn't want to do just with a thicker layer of yellow, which is the tracks for the streetcar. And this will really help me out in the following steps to more or less understand the curve of the street and keep that movement towards the main subject. Of course, now you can see me adding a little bit more of a thicker layer of blue to the painting. And yeah, I don't know, I just felt like I needed that contrast. Again, I did that in the last episode with something else. I guess, actually, I think I did it with the background of the other painting as well. I wanted that contrast, and now it's a good time to just simplify it. The sky was really simple. There were no clouds or anything that I needed that needed a little bit more detail, so I just went for a darker blue. Yep, and this is me adding the first step, I guess, of a mix of color, which is orange, because I'm trying to approach now I'm trying to approach the actual light color of the street and the facades of the buildings. I'm actually not sure anymore if those buildings are white or if they're actually a little bit yellow. The real ones, I mean, because obviously in the painting, in the picture, they appear extremely yellow and almost red and green in some places, actually. Now, jumping back to abstract paintings and that whole topic of me trying out new things and getting out of my comfort zone. Well, first of all, I want to say that it is very difficult to me, as I said before. I've really never tried abstract painting without feeling like it's not good enough. I feel like whenever I try something abstract, it just feels like I'm lazy with it, if that makes any sense. Because I'm not able to. Sometimes it's really hard to express something through painting, even if it's a realistic painting or like a scenario. I'm sorry, a landscape or a portrait. It's super hard to express that. And so whenever I don't have a reference, and whenever I cannot use shapes or elements that are easily recognizable to express whatever I'm trying to express, then it becomes too vague in my mind, and I cannot uh, land it if it makes any sense. So, said in a different way, I really like when a piece of art manages to convey a message and convey or a feeling or a story on its own without requiring an explanation next to it. I don't like when I go to a gallery or a museum and there's a piece of art that has a super long text next to it, or that requires the gallerist to explain what this is trying to say, because then it feels like this is that like the piece of art is incomplete, or like the artist didn't care enough to, yeah, basically to finish it. And then it's requiring an extra element that's not part of the piece of art to convey that message or that emotion. I know that there are a ton of different styles or different types of abstraction that go for very different things. Like some of them have to do more with um, I don't know, representing shapes, geometrical shapes, or some of them are no shapes at all and just colors and textures. Some of them prioritize emotion, gesture, and movement, like Jackson Pollock's drip paintings. And it's all okay, but they they speak on their own, if that makes any sense. And this is very difficult for me to achieve, especially because in my comfort zone, when I paint something realistic, I rely a lot on shapes and forms that the audience can relate to immediately. So if you're looking at my painting right now, you can identify that there is a street, that there are buildings, and there is something in the background. You are already connecting to the painting in some way or another, but you're starting to question it, and you can like it or not like it, but you understand a little bit of what I'm trying to express or what it's depicting. When I start taking away those elements, then that's when I struggle. And honestly, I would like to start to develop and create a skill in which I can produce some sort of abstraction that makes sense to the audience without me having to explain it. Now going back to my painting, right now I am trying to bring down those highlights a little bit, and this means that I'm applying a little bit more color mix to the facades to darken them and keeping certain areas untouched almost. So the underpainting with that very thin yellow can come through and work as my street lamps. I really believe that if you are depicting lights, artificial lights of some sort, then you better use the brightness of the canvas. You already have that white. You don't need to add more to it. Of course, it doesn't always work, and you can do whatever you want, obviously. But I think this really sets an atmosphere that is otherwise mm, too reliant on, yeah, more layers of painting. Now the next step is refining the forms and shapes that I've done already. But to be fair, I think I skipped a little bit of the previous step and I didn't finish those, well, that step, because you can really still see a lot of the underpainting on the left side. I mean, that whole facade is still barely touched. And I don't know, I think I was getting a little impatient and I wanted to see how we would look with some more detail on the painting. Right now I'm doing the windows in a very simple way, but that in this context counts as a little bit more detail. So another thing that is worth mentioning is the fact that I added a little person that will appear in the lower left corner of the painting now. And this is actually adding a little bit more life to an otherwise very empty scene. When I took the picture, there was no one on the street because it was really late at night, and I just felt like even though the colors are really, really warm, it started to feel a little bit too empty, if that makes any sense. So, again, while trying to practice more abstraction, I tried to mimic or tried to represent how a person would look like walking towards the camera with just a couple of brush strokes. Um, Maybe this is something that you can understand when you take a long exposure picture or a photograph with people walking in the scene. They're always blurry and they always kind of show some movement. And I guess this is more or less what I was trying to do with this person or with this character. Now there is a little bit more detail appearing in the on the scene those doors and windows from those facades. Again, trying and really forcing myself to not go into too much detail. I just went with the brush, a little bit of darker color, which I think was a mix of the Prussian blue, a little bit of burnt umber and red. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not really sure. Maybe I did a different color combination, but just grab that color and suggest that or paint a line that suggests that there is a door there in a window, and then that's enough. This is what I'm trying to say when I mean that abstraction is super difficult to me, because my brain always wants to continue, and I always think, this is not enough. This is incomplete. I need to add a little bit more, almost as if I don't trust that the whoever is looking at the picture will figure it out on their own. Now we come to the main focus or the main subject of the painting, which is the church in the background. Now, it's kind of ironic that I have to tell you that this is the main focus of the painting, because then it speaks against what I've been telling you for the last 20 minutes about the painting speaking for itself. But for the purposes of having an organized video and kind of bringing some structure to it, I'm just going to tell you that this is the focus of the painting, the main focus at least. And for this church, I'm using a completely different color palette to the lighting that is shown in the foreground with the facades of the houses. I'm using a lighter blue, and I think it creates immediately like a very nice contrast with the surrounding darker blue, the Prussian blue, and the orange greenish colors of the street underneath. It kind of frames it in a really nice way. So for the facade of the church, or this side of the facade, the lighting was a bit more greenish. I guess because the stone was white, grayish, and then it was being illuminated by very cold light, but at the same time, the street lamps that were very warm, were kind of also reflecting onto it, and then therefore creating this greenish, grayish, bluish color. I really don't know how I would call this color, but yeah, this is a mix of yellow, and in this case, I'm actually using white to, I guess because I first did this green bluish combination with the Prussian blue and the cadmium yellow, and then I wanted to lift it up a little bit, so I added the white to it, so it would be more like the gray that I looked at while I was there. So finally, we come to the details and the texture work, which I mostly focused on the church. Um, like I said before, I wanted the church area, not necessarily the shape of the church, maybe the colors of the church, to be the main subject of the painting. So I'm trying to make it as clear as possible. So you see what I mean when I feel like a painting should speak for itself. I want you to understand that the main focus is either the church itself with its forms, or the color and the lighting of the church. but I want it to be clear. And since I feel more comfortable achieving that through forms and more figurative elements, then I went for it here. And yeah, as you will see in the following minutes, you'll see a lot more shapes. You'll see a lot more color and detail. So as you can see now, I have a problem with my painting because I'm applying a mix of burnt umber and Prussian blue to create these deep shadows, but it's not really working because I'm using yellow, blue, and white for the layer underneath. And white has this problem that if you use it and it's still fresh, then every color that comes in contact with it gets washed away and it loses intensity immediately. So the shadows ended up being, yeah, not as contrasty as I wanted them to be. But again, it's not about being perfect, at least not for me. And I'm already adding a little bit more detail to the church than I wanted it to have. So I guess it worked in that way so that I would stop with this need to add more and more and more to it. So just to end the video, I wanted to thank you for watching it and listening to what I had to say about me trying to paint a little bit more abstract. I guess you're gonna see in a couple of minutes or in a couple of seconds, I don't know, but as a first attempt, I don't think it worked. Yeah, the church is really detailed, and right now there are other elements of the painting that are more abstract in shape. Now that I'm adding the final touches, you can see that I'm bringing a little bit of blue, the same blue from the facade, onto a door that was there. That's the actual lighting that was coming out of the house. And I think it really works with connecting the background and the foreground together. Uh, but yeah, like I was saying before, I don't think that it worked because there's still too much detail in this landscape. And sadly, so I ended up adding more detail, as you will see in a couple of seconds when you see the final result. But it's okay. As a landscape, I really like it, and the colors are really nice. The subject is clear, and I think it achieves its purpose of you focusing on the church, I hope. And yeah, it'll take me definitely more than one session to transition a little bit more or to try some successful abstract paintings. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.